John Berry to this final session.
Hello, John. Long time no see. How are you?
Good. I'm fine. Thank you.
That's good. Great to see you. You're one of the few states not in lockdown, so I guess that's a small consolation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Marvelous to see this occurring under the current circumstances. Excellent.
Thank you. And I think for the judges on the panel that may or may not be aware, of course, John is Joe Berry's son, and not only a stellar career for Joe Berry, but a stellar career as well for John in basically running the independent trade in Queensland for a long period of time. Really one of the main orchestra conductors in getting this award up and running 35 years ago, and added to that quite a well-known industry personality for a long period of time. And it's great to see him. So welcome, John. Sincerely, great to see you.
Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks.
No worries. So our sixth and final finalist for today is Kiriakov. He works in the financial sectors of Kraft Heinz company as a supply chain specialist. He also has some leadership experience through his extracurricular activities and some company roles. This afternoon, he'll be talking to us about the evolution of work in retail.
Thanks, Danielle.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Ivan, and I work for Kraft Heinz here in Melbourne. I've recently moved roles within the company. I moved from the route to market team to now being a VE project manager within the supply chain development team. Today, I'll be discussing the evolution of work in the supply chain, and more specifically on the topic of what innovations and AI investments do you see shaping the new retail industry, and what is your forecast for new roles over the next 5 years? I'll start by providing a brief overview of my presentation. I've broken down the impact that AI can have on our supply chain into three main pillars. The first being planning, the second logistics, and the third people. I'll discuss both the benefits and the challenges of each of these three pillars, and I'll conclude with some implications and discussion points. To provide you with a bit of background today, as you all know, COVID-19 over the last 18 months has turned our lives upside down. Our industry and retail market has been reshaped and has really created an opportunity for AI to disrupt the market. The focus of this presentation today will be on the end-to-end supply chain, because it is paramount that a successful business has a successful and efficient operating supply chain. And lastly, jobs will be created in this process. Some will be lost, but the focus will be on redistribution between sectors. In 1950, people thought that it would be impossible to get to the moon. It was a pipe dream, and no one was sure whether it would be possible. On the 4th of October, 1957, the very first artificial satellite was launched into space. This was called Sputnik. This was revolutionary for the space industry and a huge step forward, which gave them hope. Shortly after, in 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first man to make it into space. Again, this was a huge feat for the space industry and gave them even more hope and a huge step forward for what was later to be the space moon landing. Currently, in 2021, within our supply chain, we are at Sputnik. We have just been launched into space, and we require a number of small steps to get us to our own supply chain moon landing. As mentioned previously, I've broken down the impact that AI can have into three pillars of the supply chain: planning, logistics, and people. Small steps are required in each of these pillars to get to our desired supply chain outcome. I will now discuss some of the key benefits for each of these pillars. There are a number of benefits that AI can have on the planning pillar of our supply chain. The way I've illustrated this slide and the subsequent benefits slide is that I have a snapshot of what it looks like today in our supply chain and what it may look like in the future if we take certain steps. My first point will be around demand forecasting. Demand forecasting is the very first stage of the supply chain and arguably the most important. With AI investment and technology, we can help improve the accuracy of our demand forecasting and predictive models. We can help identify consumer trends in the market and help determine ROI on specific marketing campaigns and what impact they may have on future sales. The second point is around raw materials and ingredients. Over the last few decades, companies have made the most of global supply chains. Over the last 12 to 18 months, COVID-19 has spiked demand for certain materials and goods. This subsequently has resulted in large shortages and supply issues of shipping containers and thus materials and finished goods. As you can see on the slide, the bottom left image is the Suez Canal, which was blocked about 4 months ago. This is the main waterway that connects Europe to the rest of the world. And this is just one example of what happened during COVID-19, which led to large shortages and delays in goods. By procuring the majority of our raw materials domestically, we can help mitigate some of these shortages and delays that we've seen. By investing in AI technology, we can optimize our geographical locations and help identify where we can obtain maximum yields from all over the world. Prices in the last decade have become 35 to 50% more volatile. Investment in AI to enhance our demand models and procuring the majority of our ingredients domestically can help mitigate some of this volatility and variability that we've seen in our global markets. These are some small steps that are required within the planning pillar. There are a number of benefits that AI can have on the logistics pillar. The first point I want to make is around automated DCs. With COVID-19 and the heightened demand that we've seen, we have subsequently resulted in large shortages in labor and a need for temporary labor within our DCs, warehouses, and logistics network. We are very fortunate in Australia within our retail space to have 3 key market leaders really driving the way forward in terms of automation. These are Drake's, Woolworths, and Coles. Both Drake's and Woolworths currently have fully operational automated DCs, whereas Coles is expected to open theirs by 2023. There is also an opportunity around data integration and systems. There is an opportunity to create a supply chain cloud, which links a number of our stakeholders, such as our customers, retailers, suppliers, and manufacturers, all into one linked cloud to help improve the efficiency and visibility of these transactions. The second point I want to raise is around packaging and wastage. Currently, 1.6 billion tons of food is wasted each year, resulting in 8% of our total greenhouse gas emissions. With COVID-19 and the spikes in demand that we've seen, we've also seen an increase in B2C or business to consumer transactions. This means that more individual products are being wrapped, more individual products are being sent, and more individual products are being delivered to consumers' homes. This increases the amount of packaging waste that we have and also increases our carbon footprint on our environment. By investing in AI technologies, we can help invest in packaging converters, in recyclers, in sustainability teams, in environmental specialists, just to name a few. And by investing in these areas, we can help reduce our packaging wastage and reduce our imprint on the environment. These, again, are some small steps that are required within the logistics pillar of our supply chain. There are a number of benefits that AI can have on people. Consumers from all demographics are changing the way that they do their shopping. They are moving more towards digital and delivery-based shopping. This creates an opportunity for AI to disrupt the traditional way that we go about our shopping. There are 2 key examples in the market, Amazon Go and Woolworths' Scan and Go app-based platform. These allow consumers to walk into a store, open up their app, scan their desired products, put them in their baskets or trolleys, and walk out the store. There's no need to interact with a cashier or a register, and no physical payment needs to be made. It's all done through their online cloud-based account. Additionally, online sales and e-commerce has grown at 43% per annum over the last 5 years. And this is expected to keep increasing in the near future, creating a huge opportunity in the market to really invest and grow. The current jobs market has been changing over the last 10, 15 years. There are jobs currently out there that didn't exist 20, 30, 40 years ago. With AI being integrated into our supply chain, new jobs will be created. Some examples of these include data analysts and scientists, AI and machine engineers, converters and recyclers, environmental specialists, just to name a few. But the thing here is that people need to be upskilled and reskilled to ensure that redistribution between sectors is possible to ensure that we achieve our supply chain goal. Again, these are some small steps that are required within the people pillar. I'll now discuss some of the key challenges that we may face when talking about our 3 pillars of the supply chain. The first challenge is around logistics. As you can see on our graph here, on the right-hand side, both aluminium cans and glass bottles contribute the highest greenhouse gas emissions per 500 ml container. Now, this takes into consideration the emissions taken to produce the item, to deliver the item, to use the item, and subsequently to dispose of or recycle the item. We can see, though, that plastic bottles have the least carbon footprint on our environment. However, only 16% of all plastic is recycled. 16%. This creates an enormous opportunity to invest and increase that recycling percentage. It is estimated that by the year 2030, 28% of jobs will become obsolete as a result of automation. There are also large capital outlays and costs involved in some of these technological projects, and some, for example, like the automated DCs, may take a significant amount of time to get up and running and fully operational. These are some challenges that we may face when thinking and when doing our small steps in the logistics pillar. There are some challenges that we may face when talking about planning. When we're demand forecasting, sometimes it can feel as though we're looking through a crystal ball. The inputs that we're putting into our models are based on past experience, past data, guesses, estimates. We're not entirely sure that the numbers we're putting into our models will give us an accurate output. However, AI can help improve the accuracy of these models and predictive abilities. But investing in AI can sometimes take time, and upscaling these AI and AA potentially applications can take a minimum of 2 to 3 years and require the heavy support and commitment of senior leadership and management teams to see the projects through. There also may be some challenges faced when trying to source materials or ingredients domestically. These challenges include factors such as the climate, the weather, and land availability, just to name a few. However, the thing to note here is that the aim is to have the majority of our ingredients sourced domestically and locally where possible to ease the burden on our global supply chain and mitigate some of those price volatilities that we see. Again, these are some challenges that we may face when taking our small steps in the planning pillar. There are a number of challenges around people. When talking about in-store AI technology, consumers may become a bit afraid of how their data will be collected, how it will be used, and for what purposes. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we have seen a surge in cyber attacks, not just to consumers, but also to large retailers and corporations. The main message here is that retailers need to clearly communicate how their data will be collected, how consumers' data will be collected, how it will be used, and for what purposes. It is inevitable that with any transformation, especially one involving AI and technology, jobs will be lost. People will be made redundant. However, the main thing to focus on here is that people will need to be upskilled and reskilled to ensure that seamless redistribution can happen between both sectors and industries to allow our supply chain and our economy to remain stable. Again, these are some challenges that we may face when talking about the people pillar. On this slide, I've summarized some of the key benefits and challenges that I've discussed. Some of the key benefits include enhancing our demand forecasting and predictive abilities and models through AI. We are fortunate in Australia to have 3 key market leaders really driving the way and setting the bar in terms of automation. Additionally, jobs will be created, such as analysts, scientists, and engineers. Some of the challenges include large capital outlays and costs. There also will be time involved, especially when we're talking about automated DCs, to get these projects up and running. In terms of packaging and wastage, only 16% of all plastic is being recycled, creating a huge opportunity to invest and to improve this recycling percentage. And lastly, jobs will be lost. Some will be made redundant. However, redistribution between sectors will need to happen. The benefits here clearly outweigh the challenges. A few discussion and implication points. As you all know, our environment within the retail space has been rapidly changing. This is due to a technological boom over the last 10, 20 years, but has been fueled by COVID-19 over the last 18 months. We need to identify and appreciate that we currently in our supply chain are in a stage of AI infancy. We are at Sputnik. We have been launched into space, but we still require a number of steps to get to our desired supply chain outcome. There are also going to be costs and large capital outlays to consider, and sometimes this AI technology may not be fully accessible to us. Jobs will be created, jobs will be lost, but more importantly, redistribution will need to happen between sectors. We need to take a number of small steps to get to our giant leap. In 1969, we landed on the moon. In Louis Armstrong's words, it was one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. This moon landing was made possible by a number of small steps, all the way back from 1950 to nearly 2 decades later in 1969, which gave them hope and allowed them to achieve their dream and their final goal. We currently, within our supply chain in 2021, are at Sputnik. We require a number of steps and incremental gains to get to our own version of the supply chain moon landing. But what does our supply chain moon landing look like? It looks like this. It looks like having our demand forecasting and predictive models fueled by AI. It looks like having our DCs, warehouses, and logistics networks automated to improve efficiencies. It looks like having the majority of our raw ingredients sourced domestically to ease the burden on global supply chains and mitigate some of our price volatility. It looks like having an abundance of recyclers and converters and investment in these to ensure that we reduce our imprint on the environment. My call to action to you today is this. You, in some way or another, are all connected to a supply chain. This is either through the company that you work for, work with, or have worked for in the past. You, like myself, we are all consumers. We care about the quality of the product that we buy in store. We care about the ESG or environmental impact that these products are having. And we care about the experience that we're having when we walk into a store to buy our favorite product or service. I need you all to be believers and to be leaders in this AI transformational journey, because we need to make a number of small steps to get to our supply chain moon landing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan. Very thought-provoking, really good. In fact, just to back you up, one of the companies that I sit on the board for and have an investment in is a AI company. And we currently have had 17 data scientists and we can't get any. And so you're right about the jobs of the future. So it's spot on. It's moved a lot, but it's very hard to find those sort of resources. So thanks for the update. Let's now move to questions on the paper. And I think Matt Lloyd, you're first up.
Yeah, hi, Ivan. Very compelling and persuasive presentation style as well, I might add. My question is around, you talked about the need for upskilling and reskilling in terms of the future labour market, but we've got a few pressures at the moment in the labour market, particularly with the lack of mobility and travel and so on. How optimistic are you that in Australia we do have or could have the prerequisite talent density to really push the AI agenda?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for your question, Matt. Appreciate it. It's a great question. It will be a big challenge that we will face, especially with our borders closing. But I think that we'll get to a certain stage where our talent in Australia and domestically won't suffice and won't be enough. We will need to get to a stage where we start pulling people in from overseas. Obviously, with COVID, this is a huge issue at the moment and a big restrictor. But I see us getting to a certain stage within the talent in Australia, but not getting to where we may want to achieve in the future, say in 10, 20 years, without getting that external talent from other countries. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
Hi, Ivan. Kathy here. Excellent presentation. Very engaging and great to have a futuristic insight. I'm very much interested around what you shared around improving demand forecasting and accuracy, and I guess changing the traditional thinking of using past performance in terms of, as a way of looking at the future. What do you think the role here is of retailers versus suppliers? And what advice would you give to both retailer and suppliers, supply chain leaders, on how to be more prepared to use AI in terms of demand forecasting and accuracy?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Kathy. Great question. With retailers, I think retailers and suppliers historically obviously have worked quite closely together, but this working relationship needs to be enhanced. So when we're talking about AI investment in these models and demand and predictive abilities, we're shying away from what happened in the past and trying to focus more on the future and trying to identify marketing campaigns and consumer trends, which we may not be able to include in our models. So retailers need to work quite closely with both suppliers and consumers and what kind of data is coming out, but both have a critical role to play. So suppliers need to forecast what materials are going to be coming in based on what retailers are thinking is going to happen in terms of consumer trends, marketing trends, and what kind of things they will see changing the retail industry or landscape. So I think both need to work quite closely together to ensure that relationship is maintained to get the accuracy of these models.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Hi, Ivan. Jennifer from 6 Degrees. Thank you for your presentation. Very entertaining and well delivered. You referenced a lot about the people factor in your presentation and people being a main pillar and one of the challenges, and also spoke to 28% of jobs becoming obsolete. My question is around, obviously that then comes with a lot of uncertainty and in some cases, maybe resistance from, current talent. How do leaders and businesses manage that currently as they work through this journey of change and keep people engaged and prepare them for what's potentially coming?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for your question, Jennifer. That's a fantastic question. It still is a grey area within our industry and within this technological revolution. I think the first stage here is for retailers, corporations, and executives to first identify that this change is actually happening. And they need to identify and accept that technology will change the jobs market. It's inevitable. People will lose their jobs. It will happen. But they need to find ways to communicate this clearly to their employees and make sure that their employees have the necessary skills that are required potentially after 2030, when they're no longer in their factory job, for example, to transition to a different sector or different area of business, which they haven't really dabbled in previous to that. So I think it starts by identifying and accepting as a first point of call from our executives, and then streamlining and cascading this information down to ensure that it's done in a transitional manner.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Hey, Ivan, it's Craig Wilford here from MST Marquee. I'm interested in automation of the supply chain, and obviously AI is crucial to success on that front. What I'd really like your views on is really the trade-off that I can see the retailers with their automated DCs having around automation, which can take out a lot of cost and improve things, versus agility. I don't know how those DCs will have gone when there was the great toilet paper stockpile of 2020. How would you see the challenges around having enough agility in a supply chain to deal with unanticipated events versus the benefits that come from automation?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for your question, Craig. Again, this is a key challenge and in an area that we're new in, right? So as I said, some of the key retailers such as Coles, Woolies and Drake's have launched these DCs, and there aren't many other, there are some retailers that are close behind. But in terms of agility, yes, sometimes machines do make mistakes, and sometimes their processes may take a bit longer than if a human was there to assess it rationally and judgmentally. However, the more investment that we make in these automation technologies and dark DCs and automated DCs, the better these machines can learn from their mistakes and from their past experiences and improve in the future when we're investing in more of these. So I think to answer your question, we need more retailers and more companies to be investing in this technology so that the AI technology can learn from its mistakes, learn from its past experience to make sure that it keeps improving and potentially becomes more agile in the future.
Yeah, 100%. It's certainly still in its infancy, so long way to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thanks, Craig.
Hi, Ivan. Jared Feen, Creative Activation. Thanks for talking about going to the moon. It's pretty important right now when we're all in lockdown that we think about doing something more than getting out our front door. I'm interested in your thoughts behind accessibility of data and the protectiveness of data. Great AI is fueled by data. Some of the data is held by retailers, some of it's held by suppliers. How are we going to work together better to share what we've got?
Thanks for your question, Jared. Really good question. And again, this is a huge challenge. So currently we do have this challenge with a lack of data and a lack of accessibility, especially from a supplier's side. And this is something, as I answered one of the questions previously, suppliers will need to work closer with retailers. I'm not sure how that relationship will evolve and how we'll have more accessibility to that data, but it definitely is a big challenge that we won't just face in the future, we're facing currently at the moment. So I don't have a clear answer for you at the moment. I apologize, Jared, but it is something I think that will evolve over the next few years and will need to be worked towards.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thanks, Jared.
Hi, Ivan. Scott Shaw here. Just a question you mentioned numerous times throughout your presentation, that was really good, by the way, about the investment in AI. Do you have a figure on what you think a percentage of companies' turnover should be that they should invest in AI?
Yeah, hi, Scott. Really good question. Look, to be honest, I can't give you a number which I can put facts behind, but I would say you'll be looking at least 40 to 50% of their turnover to be invested in AI to ensure that some of this technology can be invested in at an early stage, to make sure that this technology becomes cheaper, potentially, and more accessible later down the track when smaller retailers start entering the market. But I'll probably gauge around that 40% mark, which needs to be invested.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Just one question from me. How do you manage privacy issues with AI? I mean, there's a very delicate balance between privacy issues, and I'll give you an example. The company I was talking about earlier, if you apply for a loan with, say, NAB Bank at the moment, the loan officer would say there's a 85% chance of you repaying that loan. We take that data and then we'll scrape your social media websites, we'll scrape any bookings that you've had on any fast food deliveries, any deliveries you've had on Deliveroo, etc. And we'll come back and say, no, the answer is your 90% chance of repaying or your 80% chance of repaying. And so it's quite a remarkable way in which we can assess people's propensity to pay. But at the end, we're taking a lot of your valuable information that you've ticked that box in to make it available to us. So, you know, the privacy issue associated with artificial intelligence, I'd love your view on it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for your question, Bernie. Really appreciate it. So I think in this day and age, given everyone has a smartphone, everyone's willing to give their data quite freely. I would say that people are a lot more open to giving more information these days than potentially they were 10 to 15 years ago. And in terms of privacy, I touched on this in terms of in-store AI technology, where consumers might become a bit concerned about the data they're giving to these large retailers and corporations. But again, I think clear communication needs to be made to help consumers understand what they're signing up to and how their data is going to contribute to certain things and certain trends that retailers identify. But yes, privacy, again, will be a big issue, will be a challenge that retailers will need to face, because by them obtaining all this data from their consumers, they're actually getting an advantage. They're understanding what the consumer's preferences are, what their buying habits are, what products they prefer to other products. We currently see this with some of the Woolworths' rewards cards sort of starting this technology. And this will be an issue, and I think it needs to be clear to consumers what they're signing up to ensure that, I guess, the retailers have this right to use their data.
Thanks, Ivan. I quickly checked, and you're okay. You're a good. You're not a debt risk. You're okay. However, some of the judges in this group today have got a lot of work to do. Let me tell you.
Thanks, Bernie. That gives me peace of mind. Appreciate it.
Ivan, you'll be pleased to know that you can relax. That you've now completed your task of the three.
No worries.
And really appreciate the presentation and the passion you showed on the topic. We look forward at 5 o'clock to welcoming you back, where we announce the winner and celebrate some of the success that all of the individuals had today. So well done.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Appreciate it. See you soon.
We'll get you.